What's up everybody, Ajax here, welcome to the channel. Today's episode is going to be the first episode of Ajax Helps. Today I'm going to show you 7 games that you should have in your library to be able to properly demonstrate VR to your friends who have never tried it before. Without any further ado, let's get right into it. Vicariously enjoying virtual reality through someone who has never experienced it before is one of my favorite things about VR. I own what seems to be almost half of the Oculus Quest store, and I keep myself apprised on the rest. So when it comes time to show VR to my friends for the first time, you would expect to hear, "Ooh, I have just the thing for this." But besides being overwhelmed by choice, which is a real problem, I have found that very few top-of-the-line VR experiences make for good VR demos. Now, let me briefly explain why not. As virtual reality gravitates away from first-generation VR game design like rail-based locomotion and arcade wave-style formats, the games become more complicated, both in concept and design. Now, obviously, from a gamer's perspective, this leads to some fantastic things, such as more immersion and control, but it's important to remember that our amateur VR friends don't even know how to use their virtual hands yet. I know that may sound silly, but it's honestly a strange concept to look at an empty hand in VR knowing that there's an object in it. You don't know how many times I've seen someone throw their controller thinking that it was the cube that they were holding inside of VR. Even teaching new users the difference between the grip button and the trigger button can be difficult at first. So watching a new player fiddle around, unable to use the controls intuitively, can be frustrating for both you and them. This also wastes a lot of time, and new VR users will not have strengthened VR legs, so long sessions can leave them prone to motion sickness. The last thing you want is for your friend to associate your sweet new VR headset with a headache when he or she comes out. Now, I'm sure you'll be able to deduce a pattern, but at the end of this video, I will provide you with a short list of criteria that will make a game great to demonstrate VR to your friends. That way, if you see a game that is not on this list, you can determine for yourself whether it will make for a good demo. While it's not technically a game, Oculus's First Steps is an introductory experience to VR. It's free, and it's essentially a short tutorial and some mini games that teach the player how to use their virtual hands. It's a little slow paced, and I could probably recite it word for word at this point, but if I'm honest with you, this is absolutely essential for new VR users. It's a truly perfect environment and set of activities to activate that sense of childlike wonder in the player. Watching a 59-year-old grown man perfect his paper airplane toss in VR for 15 minutes straight is not nearly as hilarious in the moment as it is to reflect on. Next up, Blast On. This player versus player online competitive duel shooter is described as slow motion bullet hell. You have a highly customizable loadout of weapons and shields that you can use in tandem with one another in order to outmatch your opponent. You yourself move in real time. It is only the bullets fired from the guns that are in slow motion. I'll be honest with you, the trailer does not do this game justice. This game was on my wish list for months before only purchasing it to decide whether it should be on this list or not. Finding new ways to properly and efficiently utilize your determined loadout is extremely satisfying. For example, I found that using the large and slow-moving orbs from one gun served as a fantastic way to block my sniper shots from my opponent's line of sight, leaving him much less time to dodge this high-powered shot as it comes barreling through the red orb at the last second. It wasn't long before I unlocked a grenade and discovered I could toss it behind my opponent as bait and blast them with a shotgun as they have their back turned. The controls are really simple: grab and shoot. There is no locomotion as the players in-game are locked in dueling position. You can, however, move around in your play space in order to grab your weapons that spawn around you. The matches are extremely quick, usually only lasting 1 to 2 minutes. Blast On has simple controls, no locomotion, and fast-paced action, which makes for a phenomenal game to demo VR to first-time users. It's listed on the Oculus Quest store for only $9.99. While virtual reality shines through its interactivity, that doesn't mean that there aren't some fantastic introductory visual experiences. I would highly recommend finding a few go-to YouTube videos in 360 degrees because they're all free. However, Cirque Du Soleil has a fantastic app on the Oculus store. No matter if you're a Cirque fan or not, these action-packed 15-minute performances are a condensed version of their 2-hour-long shows and are sure to amaze you. By far, one of the coolest aspects of this is the audience's perspective. The viewpoint from which the audience rests is one of someone standing in the middle of a stage during their performance. The entire 15-minute show is as if you are sitting in a chair as they dance around you. Honestly, it's incredible. This is a very tame and simplistic way for someone to experience VR for the first time, with the added benefit of virtually no chance of motion sickness due to a fixed viewpoint throughout the video. You can choose to either download each of these available shows for the best possible quality, or if you're worried about saving space, all of these can be streamed directly from the Cirque Du Soleil app. This will allow you to watch them even though they're not stored on your device. You will just need an internet connection to access them. As there's no interacting with your environment in the game, there are no controls either. It's extremely easy to be able to hand to, say, grandma and just have her sit back while you take the controllers. Simply select a video, drop your controllers, and enjoy. Cirque du Soleil is listed at $6.99 on the Oculus Quest store. Next on the list is Superhot VR. It was one of my very first VR experiences and has left a deep impression on me. You fight and warp your way through brief instances of glass-like enemies that happen to shoot back. The catch? Time only moves when you move. What an incredible concept. The controls are simple, almost non-existent even. You grab with the grip and you shoot with the trigger. You punch with force and dodge with your body. That's it. Locomotion in the game is basically non-existent as you warp to each location and are limited only by the size of your play space in real life. Superhot has such an incredibly low skill floor that practically anyone can pick up a headset for the first time and feel like Neo from the Matrix. Once you've made it all the way through the campaign, you are greeted with some pleasant replayability as the game introduces an endless mode with a variety of maps that keep gameplay fresh, exciting, and challenging for you after you've shown your friends. Superhot VR can be found on the Oculus Quest store for $24.99. Pistol Whip is a rhythm-based shooter where you effectively use your gunfire as the base for the music track. Unlike every other rhythm game in the past, Pistol Whip gives you absolute freedom as to when you hit that bass. You can go through a sequence like this, or you can go through that same sequence and make it sound like this. Pistol Whip has an invisible and inaudible metronome that ticks every 1/8 measure. As long as you can hit one of those eighths, you will be scored as on beat. The player has all the choice in the world as to when in those 8 measures he chooses to hit. I know what you're thinking, 8 points during a single measure? How do you ever miss? Trust me, it's harder than it sounds, and it leaves room for rapid fire shots to add a different cadence to the beat whenever the player chooses. Combine that with multiple enemies that take 1, 2, and 4 shots to kill, all while they're shooting back at you, and you've got yourself one of the most intense and active games on the Oculus Quest store. The controls are as simple as they come. Trigger is shoot, that's it. I mean, you can whip opponents with your pistol and dodge bullets, but those aren't buttons, of course. That's the beauty of VR. The locomotion is rail-based, meaning that you move along a predetermined path without the ability to deviate from it. This game has an extremely low skill floor because unlike most rhythm games, your ability to pass a level is not based on your on-beat score or even accuracy, which is the second metric used to determine one's score. It's solely based on your ability to dodge bullets. This makes it perfect for the first-time VR user. It gives the player the ability to completely disregard the tempo and score and play just to have fun, while the relentlessly sensitive and punishing scoring system gives the game this incredibly high skill ceiling. Easy to learn, difficult to master, that's just how I like it. This is one that you will want to keep installed with phenomenal replayability. Pistol Whip is on the Oculus Quest store for $24.99. Next up is Gorn. Gorn recently came to the Quest 2 store. This is what I would call a very playfully violent game. It's an arena-based gladiator game where you use a variety of weapons to defeat waves of enemies followed by bosses. The physics of this game seem to be perfectly blended between realistic and goofy, and just about every violent action is accompanied by an equally silly and unrealistic garnish. There are two forms of locomotion in Gorn. The default type is unlike anything I have ever seen in a VR game before. The player effectively grabs the air in front of them and pulls themselves forward. Think of it like standing on ice and pulling yourself along with the rope, but that rope can come from any direction that you want it to. This locomotion option is clearly the default because of its ability to help out with motion sickness. The other form of movement is smooth locomotion, which will allow the player to move about freely with the joystick on the left controller. As far as the controls go, you grab weapons with the grip button, and then, well, you swing. You also have these sweet grapple things on your wrists that took me like 30 minutes of playing to discover, and only by accident when it did happen. But man, did I have fun with these bad boys. The earlier waves are simple enough to introduce the game quickly without overwhelming the player with enemies or choices of weapon. This makes it great for the first-time VR user because there are no necessary tutorials or complicated game mechanics to introduce. Gorn is $19.99 on the Oculus Quest store. If you've ever searched the words VR and funny together, you will have most likely run across videos of people diving through their living room television screens in Richies Plank experience. So how do I explain Richies? Why don't I just show you? This is a game that, in my opinion, was specifically made for introducing your friends to VR. Aside from the classic plank mode, Richies has a decent amount of other activities to experience. I won't spoil them all because honestly discovering them is half the fun, and the vicarious enjoyment received from the plank activity alone is enough to justify the $15. One thing that's important to note about Richies is that it takes a rather large play space, as the distance from the elevator to the edge of the plank is probably more than 8 feet. My play space is pretty square, so it can be difficult to get the world aligned with your play space correctly so that you can walk all the way from the elevator to the tip of the plank without walking out of your guardian and entering pass-through mode, of course ruining the immersion. But if you simply don't have enough space to include the entirety of the plank, I do feel it necessary to mention that you can always step off the side of the plank as well. It took me an embarrassingly long time to figure that out. Richies Plank experience is an absolute must-have for introducing your friends to virtual reality. You can find it on the Oculus Quest store for $14.99. Let's be real, Beat Saber was always going to be at the top of this list. You knew it, I knew it. Beat Saber is practically synonymous with virtual reality at this point. However, if you've had your head in the sand for the last 2 years, I guess here's a brief synopsis. You slice blocks. Guys, this is a great game. Its reputation speaks for itself. I personally think this game should come pre-installed on every VR headset. There are basically zero controls. The only time you ever press a button is the trigger when you're selecting your song or settings. Locomotion is non-existent because the player is stationary as the blocks fly at him. Beat Saber has 5 levels of difficulty, which makes it easy for even the most uncoordinated of players to feel like Obi-Wan with the Beat Saber. It's such a simple concept and it's executed so well that it leaves hundreds, if not literally thousands of hours of gameplay in its wake, especially now that the Quest 2 community has access to custom songs and mods. Beat Saber can be found on the Oculus Quest store for $29.99. I have introduced quite a few friends and family members to virtual reality over the last year. Trust me when I say that I have had it go horribly awry. I have definitely made the mistake of trying to show off my most immersive VR game to new participants, only to have it backfire when one single step with the wrong locomotion setting has them ready to barf. We must remember how fragile some of our brand new VR friends can be, so when selecting a game or experience for your friend to try using VR for the first time, make sure that it has these 4 attributes: minimal controls, minimal to no locomotion, low skill floor, which means it's easy to learn, and a condensed experience, one you could quickly show your friend in 30 minutes and then maybe pass to your other friend. Now, this is obviously not a list of every great example of this, so what are some of the games that you guys have been using as demos for your first-time users? I'm genuinely curious, have any of you made the mistake of trying to go too big too quickly? Because it's our responsibility to make sure that their introduction into the virtual world is a smooth transition so that they might be here to stay. That's it for now. Ajax out.